Hello everybody, today we're talking about Five Nights at Freddy's 3, one of the most underrated titles in the entire franchise in my opinion. Many people in the fan base would claim the game's hate is well deserved or right where it should be, although I believe Five Nights at Freddy's 3 has nowhere near the amount of credit it deserves. Although I can understand some of the points of why the game is one of the worst in the franchise, like the terrible jump scares or rather easy gameplay, I think there's enough amazing things about the game that can help us overlook its few flaws. And although I won't say the game's the very best in the franchise, I think it does deserve a lot more credit than it gets. So in this video essay, I'll talk about FNaF 3 and some of its core gameplay mechanics, the good and bad, and how they compare to some of the other major titles in the franchise. And by the end of this, I'm hoping that all of you can have a newfound appreciation for the game like I do. The cameras. In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the cameras serve three purposes. 1. Track Springtrap. 2. Play audio to lure Springtrap away. And 3. Keep track of your events. Now, you might be asking, what's so important about the cameras besides they have multiple purposes? Well, FNaF 3 is the first title in the franchise to actually include multiple purposes to the camera system. FNaF 1 and 2 only require the player to look over one camera, while the rest are optional to check. In FNaF 1, you only have to look over the camera that Freddy is in, and in FNaF 2, you only have to look at Cam 11, the prize corner. The fact that you only had to check over one cam, in a way, ruined the purpose of watching the animatronics moving around the pizzeria, which would have originally given the player a sort of fear as they watched the animatronics inch closer to the office. With this, players created metas to just watch that singular cam, and for the remainder of the night you do office tasks, like checking the doors or wearing a mask to fend off animatronics. FNaF 3 changed that. Instead of watching over one singular camera, you have to constantly be checking them all to track Springtrap. This perfectly fixes the gameplay loop the previous games had. Because for me, it got boring doing the one cam, office, office method. Yes, it's effective, although it's not a fun way to play. Unfortunately, in the harder modes of the first two games, it's a necessity to have this playstyle in order to win. FNaF 3 actually utilized the camera system mechanic to its fullest, unlike previous installments. And it even gives it another purpose, the ventilation. The vents give the player even more to do on the cameras and even more to track. And although that might seem overwhelming, if you ever played the game, you would know it's really not that bad. And it's a rather interesting and different mechanic to play with than an annoying one. As mentioned previously, FNaF 3 removed the gameplay loop the first two games had. The thing about FNaF 3 is that there really isn't any guaranteed strategy in order to win. There isn't exactly any meta the player can use in order to win other than keep Springtrap in a certain area with less vents, or try and keep Springtrap in a specific, easily manageable area. Because of the vents, Springtrap can easily escape this gameplay loop pretty easily. And the Phantom animatronics also help aid Springtrap in getting away from all the gameplay loops as well. Although what really helps Springtrap is the maintenance panel. The maintenance panel has three options: audio reset, ventilation reset, and video reset. After playing the audio lure so many times, you have to go to your maintenance panel to reset your audio. This gives Springtrap a perfect opportunity to escape the loop. In addition, when a video error occurs randomly, the player is required to reset the cameras as well. And because the game relies on watching over Springtrap's location, if you even take your eye off him for a second, it can give Springtrap a perfect opportunity to escape. Although FNaF 3 has methods that can help you win, none are guaranteed, and it could take a while before you get a perfect run. Skill-based. One of the major complaints about FNaF 3 is that the game is quote-unquote easy. Although I think the earlier nights are indeed easy, if you've ever played aggressive nightmare mode, you would know the game can actually be quite difficult. One thing that people don't appreciate about the difficulty in FNaF 3 is it's more skill-based than luck. It's easier to most people because the game's mostly skill-based, and after you master the game, it's often easier to beat the later nights. Coming off of FNaF 2, this was a perfect change. FNaF 2's Golden Freddy mode is 50% luck and 50% skill, with half the attempts in the game being impossible to beat. Lots of the franchise's Golden Freddy mode require a mixture of skill and luck. FNaF 3 removes this skill/luck gameplay, which I thought was a perfect change. It makes the game less frustrating, and if you've ever played FNaF 2's Golden Freddy mode, you would know that luck-based nights are one of the most annoying things in the entire franchise. So yes, although easy at times, the game really just eliminated the luck aspect while keeping the game difficult, which it did very well. Jump scares. Although most people say the jump scares of FNaF 3 are extremely lazy, I disagree. Yes, I can agree Springtrap's jump scare is one of the worst jump scares in the entire franchise. Although it also makes sense, Scott really couldn't have done Springtrap's jump scare any other way. Throughout FNaF 3, Springtrap comes off as human-like, even doing things like running through the hall in front of us. It would have been weird if Scott made Springtrap do something like FNaF 2, where the character jumps out at the protagonist. I think a game that perfects Springtrap's jump scare perfectly is Fazbear's Fright's Attraction. So yes, there is room for improvement with Springtrap's jump scare. I think the way it is presented is completely fine. In addition, the jump scare couldn't really make a loud robotic sound like any of the other games because, well, Springtrap is a rotting corpse. I note this because the jump scare's sound also contributes to the shock a player has when receiving one. Other than Springtrap's jump scare, I think the Phantom's animatronics jump scares are pretty okay. Compared to the other games, they aren't the greatest, but they definitely aren't the worst. And Phantom Foxy, in my opinion, has one of the best jump scares in the entire franchise. I remember during my playthrough, I'd be going to my maintenance panel, see Foxy, and have a literal heart attack, which is something not many FNaF games have made me feel. So extra points for Phantom Foxy having one of the best jump scares in the entire franchise, although that could just be my personal opinion. Ambience/setting. Something that some people may not appreciate about the game is the game's location, Fazbear's Fright. I think the ambience and feel of FNaF 3 perfectly encapsulates a true horror attraction. Even the background music, the office itself, gives off its own feel. FNaF 3 needed this different setting. The first two games took place in a pizzeria. Scott knew he shouldn't try and replicate the typical formula as stated before. Because of this, I feel he went to the next best thing other than a pizzeria, an actual horror attraction. Well, best other than an underground location or a children's bedroom. The creation of Springtrap. Something that came out of FNaF 3 that everyone appreciates is the creation of Springtrap. This was the first ever appearance of the game's main antagonist, Purple Guy, but also not to mention the only game to make Springtrap's model good.
Oh my god!
I could go on for hours talking about the terrible inconsistencies with the later models, but I won't bore you with all that. Just imagine if Springtrap was originally any of these other models. As you'd imagine, the character probably wouldn't be as popular as he is today, as Springtrap is a fan favorite among the fan base. Which is a crazy thought to think that FNaF 3 is the only game where Purple Guy / Springtrap got the treatment he deserves, the one main antagonist of the franchise. What also came out of this is the creation of one of the most iconic horror characters of all time. Although at one point I would have said the most iconic horror game characters. If you look at the FNaF movie's opening week, the movie made $78 million, while Halloween Ends back in 2020 made $40.1 million in its opening week. This demographic really goes to show how the franchise holds up to other massive franchises such as Halloween, which includes Michael Myers himself, who's often regarded as one of, if not the most iconic horror character ever created. One thing that's also great about FNaF 3's Springtrap is the main character in the game. In other games, like Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, he's treated as a side character who doesn't do anything different than the rest of the cast of characters. Or in Security Breach, where the Springtrap boss fight isn't even the real ending and is one of the worst boss fights I've ever seen in a game, period. FNaF 3 is unfortunately the only game in the franchise that gives Springtrap the spotlight he deserves, especially since most of the game's success comes from Springtrap's character. So with the creation of FNaF 3 came one of the most iconic horror characters of all time, Springtrap, all while finally presenting Purple Guy in the games, all while doing it perfectly. Conclusion. Although FNaF 3 definitely has its flaws, like the locations map layout being really weird, or the game's main 5 nights being relatively easy compared to the other titles, I'd say the game is one of the best in the franchise. It created the iconic fan-favorite character Springtrap, tried to improve on the previous game flaws, and did it successfully. Also, in a way, perfected a lot of things that FNaF 1 and 2 couldn't. And this isn't me saying FNaF 3 is better than 1 or 2. Although I know FNaF 2 is a fan favorite, I think FNaF 3 can arguably be better in some cases, but that's just my opinion. FNaF 1 obviously is better than FNaF 3, but the point of this video wasn't to make you think FNaF 3 was better than the other games, or make you think the other games are worse than they really are. The point of this video was to shine light on what FNaF 3 aimed to do, and how it was perfectly executed in my opinion. It successfully broke the loop of the previous games and really tried to be different, as Scott knew he couldn't just make the third game the same format as the previous two. So next time you possibly revisit these games or see someone else's videos on FNaF 3, try and appreciate the game and what it aimed to do. That's the end of this video. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please go to the comment section and let me know what to make next. I'd love to hear your guys' ideas. Thank you for watching.